everyone. Welcome to this video with me, Rodney Croome, and Dr. Sharon Dane to talk about the issue of blood donation. Recently, Just Equal Australia formed a new campaign group called Let Us Give. Let Us Give has been engaging in a range of activities to try and reform our blood donor system. And one of those is to try and educate people about exactly what the situation is and what some of the barriers are. At the end, I'll be asking Sharon about those, and at the end we'll have some ideas about how you can contribute. So getting straight into it, Sharon, can you give us an overview of what the current blood donation policy is in regard to men who have sex with men?
Yes, in Australia at least, there's currently a 3-month deferral period, meaning someone has to wait 3 months before they can donate if they've had sex with if you're a man who's had sex with another man within the last 3 months. So this, although is referred to as a deferral period, it tends to work more as a ban because there's not too many people who are willing to abstain from sex for that period of time, particularly if they're in a relationship with someone.
And this ban doesn't just affect gay men, does it? There are others who are caught in it.
Exactly. So it's gay men who have sex with men, bi men who have sex with men, actually even heterosexual or men who identify as heterosexual who have sex with men. And it also impacts some transgender women who have sex with men and some non-binary people who have sex with men. So it's quite far-reaching, yes.
And as you said, the deferral period, so-called, or we can call it the abstinence period, sexual abstinence period, of 3 months has been in place for a couple of years now. Before that, it was 12 months. And the policy goes all the way back to the 1980s when HIV appeared and there started to be HIV infection through blood donation. But a lot's changed since then. And in a number of other places now, they've got rid of this ban that focuses on gay men and bi and trans women who have sex with men, and adopted a new policy of individual risk assessment. Can you talk a bit about what that policy is and how it works out in other countries?
Yeah, more recently, it's been happening quite quickly in the last couple of years. There's been a shift away from the deferral periods to, like, for example, the UK, Canada, the Netherlands, and France have now removed what they call that automatic deferral in favor of what's called individual risk assessment. Using individual risk assessment is where all donors are, screened based on their individual risky sexual activities. So rather than say, you belong to this group, which we consider to be at slightly higher risk, and we're going to ban you all because you belong to that group, we're going to ask you as individuals about your behavior. So this means, it's sexual orientation or gender identity is no longer relevant. And it allows for a whole group of people who are actually safe to donate, that belong in that group, to do so. For example, the vast, vast majority of gay men do not have HIV, are not going to contract HIV, and yet that whole group of men who have safe blood can't donate, which is detrimental not only to, in terms of it being stigmatizing, but it also restricts or denies Australia a new source of safe blood.
So this new policy, which asks everyone for their individual risk, whether they're gay or straight or cis or trans or whatever,
yep.
Can you just give us a sense of where that's been put in place overseas, and what the question is that is asked of everyone?
Okay. I guess the main question, and it's the UK model, which now looks like it's adopted in Canada or something very similar, revolves around anal sex. So that question is, have you had anal sex in the last 3 months? And if you say yes, then it goes to, is this with someone new or multiple partners? If that is the case, then you need to be deferred. So basically you can have anal sex with someone you know for longer than 3 months, or, your long-term partner, for example, that's not a problem. But if it's someone you don't know or haven't known for very long, then that becomes a risk. So that's when you will be deferred. And that applies to anyone who answers yes to that. So it doesn't matter if you're a heterosexual woman or a gay man or a trans person, non-binary, it's all the same.
Last year, I think you did a research paper for Just Equal, where you looked at the latest clinical research from around the world, and also at those places where these policies have been put in place, because although Britain and Canada are places quite similar to Australia, there are a number of other places as well: France, Argentina, Greece, Italy, Spain. The list is quite long. You looked at the evidence for of whether there's any safety risk from moving from the existing ban on men who have sex with men to an individual risk assessment policy. Can you tell us a bit about what your paper found?
Yeah, I looked at most of these studies are fairly recent, so 2020, 2021. And I looked at the evidence that was used to support the changes, like in the UK, Canada, and France, mainly. And these studies, both clinical studies and modeling studies, showed what the researchers termed to be the risk of infecting the blood supply with HIV is no longer meaningful. That's the terms they used. And the reason for that is because there's more stringent, robust screening now than there used to be. And also the rate of HIV new infections is declining. So both of those things together have shown that, there's always a chance of an infection of any kind, not just HIV, getting into the blood supply. The idea is to do your utmost to ensure that doesn't happen. But that also doesn't mean there can't be any risk. There's always some, even if it's a very, very tiny risk. So what they're saying now is the risk is so small, and that it doesn't warrant this huge, what you call exclusion of a whole group of individuals.
In our contact with the Red Cross Lifeblood Service, their response to individual risk assessment has been fairly negative. Their argument seems to be not that allowing gay men to donate would increase the risk, but that asking these questions, these sexual safety questions of heterosexual donors, might reduce the number of heterosexual people who are donating. What does the latest research, I think there's a paper from Canada about this, what does the latest research show about this particular objection to change?
Yes, there is. There's a paper that came out this year. I think it was in June this year, about how many heterosexual donors you would likely lose if you were to ask everyone the question about anal sex with new and multiple partners. The results were from that study, and this is based on them surveying every donation, whole blood donation site in Canada. So it was a big sample. And based on those donors, their answers to these questions, they would lose 1%. The deferral would be a 1% deferral rate of loss. So that 1%, and if it was looking strictly at just the anal sex questions, which is what we're concerned about here, it was even lower than that. It was 0.7, not even 1%. So the conclusion in that study was that most of that would be made up by having new donors from the men, like, for example, gay men and trans women donors who are able to donate, who are safe to donate. They would make up for that loss almost entirely, so there'd be, and perhaps, and this is just estimating, it probably may even be more than that, that loss, make up for more than that loss. We don't know yet because data isn't out yet on what's happening in Canada and the UK yet. Although it looks favorable based on, what little information they have, these researchers said the outcome in both in the UK, for example, looks favorable. So the same thing as in Australia. There's this fear that if you do ask heterosexual people who are having anal sex with new people they don't know for very long or multiple partners, if they say yes to that question, they will have to tell them they can't donate for 3 months. The fear is that, or the rationale is that their risk of having HIV is somewhat less than men who have sex with men. So they would be turning away people that they think might be safe or safer. However, that doesn't really seem to be a point, given the Canadian study that's saying, no, the loss is going to be minimal anyway. And it also isn't really a moral reason, to turn away a whole group of people who are safe because you want to hang on to another group.
Instead of talking about whole blood donation by gay men, the Red Cross Lifeblood Service, I think, wants to take us down the path of plasma donation. What it wants is to allow gay men to be able to donate plasma, but not whole blood. And that's its alternative to adopting this individual risk assessment approach. It's a step forward, I guess, that there'll be more plasma available if gay men are able to give blood, so that's good. But it doesn't really answer the question or solve the problem in relation to whole blood, does it?
Well, no, they're two separate things. Being able to donate plasma is also not as straightforward as being able to donate whole blood. It used to be, and I don't know if they've recently changed, but you had to do at least one successful whole blood donation before you could go on to plasma. They maybe changed that, I don't know. But it is a different process. It's more time consuming. It's a bigger needle, for example. Not to try and turn anyone off this, but it is a different type of donation. So by allowing gay men or opening up the doors to that, that's great, that's wonderful. But it's still, for all those donors who want to donate whole blood, which is easier to do, they're not able to.
And of course, not being able to donate whole blood, as you indicated before, can be a bit stigmatising, as well as cutting off an important new source of safe blood. The stigmatising aspect was brought to my attention the other day when, in my home state of Tasmania, the Red Cross was running a blood drive, a workplace blood drive for emergency services personnel, which is great. But I had contact from 2 gay men who are in emergency services and the police in Tasmania who weren't able to donate. And one of them had to make up an excuse because he wasn't out to his colleagues, had to make up an excuse for why he couldn't donate blood. That's not a good situation. And it's one that could be easily solved, as far as your paper says, by adopting this new system. So we're in a situation in Australia where countries like us, the UK, Canada, the Netherlands, France, and others are adopting this new system, which seems to work really well. The Red Cross Lifeblood Service here doesn't want that new system. It instead is saying, well, here's plasma, but that's it. You can donate plasma, but nothing more. So in order to try and create change, what are the kinds of things that Let Us Give is doing at the moment?
Well, as much as possible. Amongst that is like researching, lobbying, definitely, and raising awareness, public awareness. And right now, the best thing people can do is sign the petition that we have on our website.
Yes, I'd urge everyone to do that. We're going to be presenting that petition to Parliament soon. There are a number of parliamentarians who support individual risk assessment and parties, but we're yet to convince the current government. So, yeah, please get on to a petition page, which there'll be a URL for at the end of the video, and sign that. And also check out the Let Us Give website, which has all the latest news on blood donation. plus a copy of Sharon's research into the situation in other countries. Anything to add, Sharon?
I don't think so. I think that sums it up really well.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time, and thanks everyone for watching. We'll catch you soon.